Welcome back to another OREI video here at YouTube. My name is Roberto George and I hope you are having a great day. Now you might have found yourself browsing through our products, exploring some of the solutions that we have, and have found yourselves with more and more questions as you delve deeper into our catalog, which is huge and we are very proud of it. And I get it, the choices are just overwhelming. There are too many to choose from. What features do I need? How do I future-proof my setup? And a whole lot of questions, which are exactly what I will try to answer today in this video. So let's start with it. First of all, what is an HDMI extender? And basically it is a device that will help us to transmit an HDMI signal over long distances, whether through wires or wirelessly. And these devices are used to overcome the limited distance capable of HDMI cables. Now you might be asking yourself, why do I need an HDMI extender? And there are a lot of reasons, but one basic that I can give is that if you have your media sources in one place of the house, like your basement, and then you have on your room, on your living room, and so on and so forth, several TVs or projectors, and you want to get the signal from that particular device, then the best solution is an HDMI extender, regardless of the type of extender, which we will cover in just a moment. One of the common examples is if we have an Apple TV 4K, which is an expensive device, or an Nvidia Shield TV latest generation, or a PlayStation 5, which is more expensive, and we are using it here on this particular room. But if I want to take advantage of the PlayStation 5 in this particular case on another room without having to take it to that room, then the HDMI extender will be the best option. And although we could theoretically get a long HDMI cable, but in the long term it's just not reliable. So that's where HDMI extenders come into place. And now that you know what an HDMI extender is and why you might need one, let's take a look at another question, which is, which HDMI extender should I choose? And to help you choose the best extender for your particular scenario, we have created a guide with 4 steps that will take in consideration several scenarios and will help you to make that decision. And these are just simple things that we just need to have in mind before deciding, because there are several factors like the infrastructure, coaxial or Ethernet, for example, that if we already have in place at our home, we will probably be deciding with one of those factors in mind. Now, the first one is the distance, and basically this is the first one that we need to have in mind. What is the distance that I will need to have between my source signal or my media device and the TV or projector that I want to use? And I'm just exemplifying with this extender, which we will talk about it in just a few moments, because this will represent the place where I have my media source, and this will represent the place where I have the TV or the projector that I want to use as the signal that I've got on my PlayStation 5, for example, right over here on the basement, and this one on the second floor. So distance is something that we really need to pay attention, and we will see it in just a moment where we can get those details. Resolution is another factor to have in mind. Depending on the extender, we will get 4K or 1080 or lower resolutions depending on what we are looking for. And besides the resolution, also some capabilities like HDR, Dolby Vision, and so on and so forth. So we will need to decide what kind of device we need based on the source device that we have, PlayStation 5, and the signal that we want to achieve on our TV or projector. Transmission mode, which is the kind of transmission that we will have between the two extenders. Now, the most common is the Cat over Ethernet cable, like this one right over here, which we will check in just a few moments. We also have the wireless transmission, which is the one that will not require any kind of cable, so it will transmit the signal over Wi-Fi. Then there are the coaxial, which might be interesting in some case scenarios, and lastly the fiber optics, which usually just for long distances and in a corporate or commercial environment. But we will take a look at them. That might be interesting for your case as well. Finally, also the additional features, because not all extenders are the same. So there are extenders that will give us 1080 or 4K but will not do HDR. So if you need HDR, that will be probably an additional feature. If you want to connect it to your eARC or ARC soundbar, that is also an additional feature that we need to look into. If we want to have bidirectional infrared remote, if we want to have a KVM controller, or if we want to have it over IP address, where every single device will have its own IP and we can check it on our network. So these are things that are very important. On our website is something that you will find just below on each of the devices, and you can read everything there, the main features and also the additional features. And now that we have covered these 4 steps to have a better understanding of the types that we have available on the market, we are going to see an example or two of each one of these so that we can understand a little bit better. And of course, there will be links down below so that you can check every single model that we are talking about in this particular video. And of course, on the OREI huge catalog, you will find a lot more. But today we will have these in mind. And let's start with the most common ones, which are the ones that I've got right over here with me. And these will use an Ethernet cable to send signal from one unit to the other, so that I can have my PlayStation 5 right over here and I can have my TV 3 floors above on my house. This type tend to be a bit cheaper, and if we have the means to connect the Ethernet cable between them, then probably the best choice, as they will give us a lot of options for the price we pay and are very reliable, depending only on one Ethernet cable, which usually also has a low cost. So for example, if you don't have a network at your home implemented, and if you need to decide to put one cable from one unit to the other, this will be a very cheap thing to do at home, and probably the best solution in terms of budget when deciding the extender if we don't have the network ready. These 2 units that I've got right over here will support up to 4K, and taking the UHD EX165HK for example, will do 4K at 60 Hz, HDR video up to 165 feet away with HDMI 2.0 and HDCP 2.2 compliant. In this particular case, we only need to connect the power adapter to one unit, and the other unit will also get the power from the first one. Codecs and audio formats will depend on the unit that we are using, and as this depends on each unit, for that I would suggest reading the specifications of these 2 examples. For example, as I mentioned, the links will be down below so that you can have a better idea of 2 devices that will deliver very minimal differences, but they might be important depending on the device that you are using. So for example, if you are using a PS5, I would probably choose this model right over here. But if you are only using a NVIDIA Shield TV Android TV box or similar device, I would go for this one. Now, extender by coaxial cable. And remember, we talked earlier about it. There might be advantages and disadvantages, and one of the things that might lead us to implement a extender by coaxial is, for example, if we already have a network at home. Now, coaxial, if you don't know or if you're not aware, is basically the cable that we use to our TV. Now, most modern houses are using Ethernet or Wi-Fi to watch TV, or even cable, and have left their network laying around. Actually, it's not laying around, it's between our walls. Now, if we don't have an Ethernet network that we can connect one of these, but if we have a coaxial network on our home, then we might think about this type of extenders to take advantage of our infrastructure and in this particular case spend less money, at least on the infrastructure. Now regarding the extender, we can take a look at an example, for example the CO UHD 330K, which is capable of extending our HDMI signal up to 330 feet at 4K resolution and 60 Hz with bidirectional infrared signal and up to 5.1 audio channels including Dolby Digital, DTS and PCM. And this might be a great option, for example, to take advantage of our already implemented coaxial network at home. Now, if you ask me, if we don't have a coaxial network and we don't have a Ethernet network, which one should I choose? If we look at the budget, we will choose the CAT or Ethernet infrastructure because it will be cheaper all the way. But there are scenarios where the coaxial will take advantage, especially when we are talking about longer distances. And talking about longer distances, let's talk about the third type, which is wireless. And by this I mean that the wireless is the easiest to implement because we don't need any kind of wires. I don't have any unit here, but if this was a wireless unit, I just needed to connect this to my PlayStation 5 and this one to my new brand TV that I've got on another room, and that would be it. Connect this one, and that is it. So the advantages are huge. But there are also some disadvantages. Like any other device that uses wireless to transmit any signal, the longer the distance, the less signal we have. This is something that we need to consider when we are planning our distances between the device that transmits, the PlayStation 5, and our big TV. Let's take a look at an example so that we can see some features. Now, looking at the WHD Pro 100K, it supports 1080 up to 100 feet line of sight. So if you need a short distance, this is the ideal. I just need to connect this one right over here, this one on the next room, for example, and I can take advantage of just one device on both places without any wires. However, wireless devices are not just for short distances, usually for shorter. But if we take a look, for example, at the WHD Pro 330K, which is able to transmit up to 330 feet line of sight with a resolution of 1080 at 60 Hz. Now, these can also pass through walls, but anything that works via Wi-Fi, the more walls and barriers that we find, the weaker will be the signal. So just have this in mind. And if you wonder that wireless transmission is only up to 1080, that's not true. If you are needing to pass the PS5 signal at 4K, there's also one example that we can take a look, which is the WHD Pro 100K, which achieves exactly that, 4K at 30 Hz up to 100 feet line of sight. So if we want to send the signal to short distances, I would say that the easiest to implement is the Wi-Fi. Not the cheapest one, but the easiest one to implement, and in some case scenarios we just don't want wires. Now let's move to the last one, which is the fiber optics extenders. Now, if we really need long distances and if we want to have all the bells and whistles, then fiber optics is the way to go, but be prepared because they are more expensive. Now we can take a look at the UHD transmitter F040TX along with the receiver UHD F040RX. Now these are sold separately, so have that in mind in the moment of choosing, but they are capable of reaching up to 40 kilometers distance between the transmitter and the receiver, or 25 miles distance, which is just huge. All this over a single fiber optic cable. Now, I doubt that you need this to your home unless you want to transmit from your home to your neighbor's home, which have to be less than 25 miles or 40 kilometers. Now, looking at this particular model, it supports up to 4K HDR10 with zero latency uncompressed video signals, and this kind of technology is usually more expensive, but it brings all the advantages while removing any limitation that we have seen in other type of extenders. And hopefully this video was helpful to understand, in first place, what are HDMI extenders, what might we need them for, and besides that, what types are there available to choose, and which one should I choose. And hopefully with this video I could achieve that, helping you out in deciding which is the right model for you. Don't hesitate to reach out to OREI's tech support for any question regarding any units that there's on the website. Besides that, if you want to leave a comment down below, please do. We will answer as fast and as best as we can. If also possible, leave a thumbs up right over there and subscribe to the channel if you still haven't done already, to keep on receiving news and videos such as this that will help to clear out some of the questions that we might have. That being said, my name is Roberto George, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.